What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with NIO, Tesla, SPY, and the overall market. I want to talk about why tomorrow is going to be a wild day as we just got some big tech earnings, not to mention more data will be coming out. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, and the offering is very soon at the end of March. Anyways, as far as NIO is going, we have this resistance at 4.5, which NIO is not able to break. We also have support at this 4.3 area, which is where our key EMAs happen to be. This is where NIO is trading for now. There could be a small decline coming because we are seeing big tech earnings selling off. That's why we're seeing stocks like Tesla, stocks like Aapl, many of them kind of selling off a little bit during the after hours right now, but this might just be a temporary move, right? It might just be a temporary move to the downside as we're seeing SPY selling off a bit and many others just for the time being. So I want to give you guys a warning about that. Just know a couple of things involving the markets. China has announced some retaliatory tariffs against the US after Donald Trump has announced that the US will be increasing tariffs on China, and those took effect. So with that happening, the authorities in Beijing have imposed 50% tariffs on U.S. oil and liquefied natural gas exports and a 10% charge on American oil and agricultural equipment. So they're continuing to retaliate, which is not the best of news. We saw the market dip a little bit once this came out, only to get bought back up. So far, the market's not too phased by this. And if anything, it's very resilient. As far as NIO goes, we did get some negative news. Today, we had JP Morgan analysts come out and they downgraded NIO from an overweight rating to a neutral, reducing their price target to about $4.70 from $7 before. Now, seeing downgrades is completely normal, guys, because despite the downgrade, they are still projecting a 50% increase in their sales. The only question is the time it takes for them to get to their overall profitability. They also think that NIO is going to come short of their doubling target, so getting 440,000 units by 2025. We'll see about that. But here's my view, guys. Yes, it's normal. For the short term, there's going to be these companies that come out. Analysts are going to be a little bit a little bit more pessimistic for NIO, talking about how they're not profitable. Their sales are in a very, very tough place and factors just like that. But I'm not worried about it because what's going to matter is once they become profitable, things will transform for them. And once we really see those sales increase, I think it will help the share price. So it needs a lot of time to get there. For the short term, yes, if they have bearish targets, that's totally understandable. But for the long term, I still remain a very, very big bull. Goldman Sachs also has a sell rating for NIO. Besides that, the price-price ratio is just still at a low level, which is why NIO is underperforming. Wednesdays tend to be green about 55% of the time. And besides that, we tend to see more volatility at 10 a.m. and then during the second to last hour of the day. But that's pretty much it. As far as the market goes, we had a nice green day. Market tried to rebound as we saw Nvda, lots of big tech stocks trying to push. But during the after hours right now, we're seeing Google and AMD selling off pretty sharply. That is what could influence the market to sell off a little bit tomorrow. So at the time I'm recording this, Google is down 7%. Google/Alphabet. We also have AMD crashing. It was down about, let me just double check this, 9% right now and counting. So I do anticipate some downside because of that, which could drag NIO a little bit lower, but then there could be a bounce after that, so just keep that in mind. Why is this important? We just got earnings once again from AMD, Alphabet, and Snap. In a nutshell, Alphabet's earnings did have a revenue miss, so they dropped 6% after what we just saw. We saw their cloud revenue at about $11.96 billion versus the $12.19 billion expected, leading to some concerns about their growth outlook. YouTube ad revenue did well, and other factors were still quite good for them. Looking at the overall numbers, they had about $2.15 for their EPS above expectations, but the overall revenue is at $96.47 billion below expectations. Besides that, there was a mixed performance for their Google Cloud revenue. That was very close to expectations, but Google Cloud was a little bit weak. And besides that, there were some bearish revenue concerns right now, especially because of that. That's the reason why we saw the share price come down with them missing on revenue. On top of this, when it comes to AMD, okay, if anything, they beat on EPS and their revenue was pretty good. But the problem was the fact that there's been some concerns about their data center trajectory, looking at the reports and their overall growth, even though it was technically above expectations, is technically at a decline compared to what we saw during the previous year. So the fourth quarter results were a decline compared to what we saw from the previous year, falling short of those expectations from that end. However, on an adjusted basis, yes, it was, better, but because their numbers were a little bit shorter than what we saw last year, that led to some concerns. There's also some concerns about what's happening with their data centers and factors like that. I'll talk more about that later. That's why the share price came down. Snap, on the other hand, did well. They posted a surprise profit, better than expected, with a 14% increase in revenue, and they saw their EPS once again in the green. So they did relatively well, at least on that end. So they did good there. Good to see this nice growth that was perpetuating. In terms of our economic calendar, just know that tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, February 5th. At 10 o'clock a.m., we have the ISM Services PMI, business activity, employment, and new orders coming out. This may lead to more volatility, so watch for that very carefully. This sector is going to be very important for understanding how the economy is looking. And besides that, there's nothing else that's too crazy. We just have a couple of Fed speakers. So get ready for some high volatility. Once this data comes out, it may cause a bigger move. Besides that, as far as NIO goes, I think that the earnings that came out with Google selling off and the market maybe selling off a bit could cause this to dip a little bit more. We might be looking for NIO to dip towards 4.3 flats. We got to hold this to try to bounce. If we don't hold that, we could be dipping back down to like 4.2 before we see some buyers defend. Well, look at the last couple of days. It's been going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between like the low fours and the 4.5 area. So I anticipate it's going to just continue to go back and forth. There might be more downside for the 4.2s. Then we'll see what happens after that. For SPY, okay, we're seeing something very similar. This may see a small decline, but as long as we hold this low at 590, we're going to be fine. I think that SPY is going to sell off a little bit tomorrow morning. Might be on its way back down towards either 598, if not 595 or so. But as long as we don't lose 590, we could just try to bounce back up and make a nice comeback. Look for a small pullback because of these earnings. I do think we're going to pull back a little bit. Same thing with the QQQ. It's down about 0.37% right now. Watch 521. We got to hold that, or else we could be dipping to 518 to 516 down here. Then we could try to bounce after that. But there might be a small dip coming, so please keep that in mind. For the IWM Russell 2000, we could be retesting 226 before it tries to bounce back up for 229. Keep that in mind. ES might be retesting 6036, if not the lower 6,000 before it tries to bounce again for a bigger move back up. NQ might be retesting 21,500 or below before we start to see a bounce. So the 21,400 could be tested before we see some buyers defend, so keep that in mind. For Bitcoin, we're looking for essentially 96,500 as our support, and we'll see if buyers defend us to push us back up to 99,000. For Nvda, we're on a bit of a downtrend. I do want to mention that Nvda is showing some life trying to get back above 120, but it wasn't able to hold above that. So I think it's going to do something like this where it dips here, comes back up, just kind of consolidates for a bit before it attempts some kind of rebound later on. But look for a little bit of consolidation between 115 and 120 for some time before it tries to break out higher. Tesla, same thing. It's basically consolidating near its 200 EMA. Might dip a little bit because of Google's earnings to retest 386 or so. But over time, I do think there might be an attempt to push to fill this gap up here. So look for some consolidation down here before it attempts to rebound. Might try to fill this gap first before it makes a move lower, just like this, as we are going to likely respect this wedge. So I'm looking for a move like this as the most likely possibility. For others out there, we also happen to have Aapl. Aapl is looking decent. It's trying to test 233's resistance, might retest 230 before it tries to bounce again. I see potential in this, but look for a small pullback after these earnings. It might pull back just a bit. We'll see if 230 holds or not. Otherwise, it could still bounce off of that. Going over just a couple more. AMD, like I said before, looking bearish. Watching 109. If it doesn't hold, I'm looking for like the 105s. So it's going to gap down, unfortunately, showing some weakness. We may see ARM retest like 160 before it tries to bounce. It's still bullish, doing a good job at holding up. Coin needs to hold 277.5, or else it might dip a little bit more. But if it dips, like I said before, it's very volatile, going back and forth between price action. So watch 277. If it fails, we could be dipping all the way down to 272. Then we'll see if buyers defend it from there. Amazon might be dipping to about 235 or so before it tries to bounce. It's going to get impacted by Google. Meta might be retesting 689 for a small dip and might dip a little bit to 689 before it tries to bounce back up. Microsoft might be dipping towards the 405s, 408 area, then 405 again before it tries to bounce. And then Google is down like currently almost 8%. Watching 191 as our main support. If it does not hold us, we could be dipping towards this low right here, towards like 187. So be careful, guys. Might be a small dip in the markets. So as far as NIO goes, we're just consolidating. Might be a small dip towards 4.3, if not 4.25. Then we could bounce there and just continue to consolidate. So keep that in mind. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. That's it for my video. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And just get ready for more volatility with the ISM data coming out for tomorrow. Until then, look for a small pullback and we'll see how things end up going. Thank you for listening and peace out.